somehow we've got to recognize when we do have power, we've got to use it, not in a narrow strategic way, but in the name of the suffering of those Sly Stone called everyday people. The Joys, the Scotts, and they are disproportionately chocolate. I mean, we can talk about reparations further down the line the same way.
Yeah.
How do you hit the issue when people don't have what they ought to have? Access to wealth and dignity and a job with a living wage and so forth and so on. That's the kind of, I think, vision and fire. And I do think that the squad, they've got some of this inside of them. They're just in a decrepit, corporate-driven Democratic Party.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radical Democracy Show. I'm your host, Kamali Rose, here with you tonight to talk about what I think is a vital moment that is shaping up here in electoral politics and on the left. And there's a lot of background to this. Hopefully we'll be able to get into some of, a lot of that. But I really wanted to make sure that we cover this issue. Tomorrow is January 3rd. It's my birthday. Awesome. But aside from it being the great day of my birth, it is also the day that Nancy Pelosi's speakership comes up for a vote. And so they are voting for a Speaker of the House tomorrow. And what we have is what I believe is a once in a lifetime, truly, once in 100-year events that are overlapping right now in this moment. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for the left to exercise some power and to try to push the ball forward on Medicare for all, on providing universal health care. We're 300 and almost 50,000 Americans are dead already in less than a year from COVID-19. We're on pace for 400,000 dead by the time that Joe Biden is inaugurated in just less than 3 weeks from now. When Joe Biden is inaugurated, the estimates say that there'll be 400,000 dead by then. So we're on track for at least 500,000 dead Americans within 1 year of this pandemic. We haven't seen a pandemic like this since the 1918 pandemic, literally over 100 years ago. We are in the midst of an overlapping economic depression. Of course, we went into recession before the lockdowns began for COVID-19, before we even started to take it seriously in this country. We had already gone into recession as of February. And so we have an overlapping economic depression, historic unemployment, unlike anything that we've seen dating all the way back to the Great Depression of 1930. So yet again, another once in 100-year economic event overlapping with this once in 100-year public health crisis. And on top of that, you also have for the first time in over 100 years, since 1880, we have the smallest margin between Democrats and Republicans in the House of Representatives. And it's, I think, a margin of 4 at this point. It's, there's still a couple of outstanding elections, but at this point, it's a difference of 4. There's only 4 more Democrats and Republicans. And at the same moment, progressives have been fighting for the past 4 years now since Trump was elected, Justice Democrats, and folks, brand new Congress have been fighting to try to get a large enough block of progressives into Congress and to actually be able to affect change, right? And what we have here is a unique moment where we have that block of progressives, the so-called AOC and the squad, is larger than the margin between Democrats and Republicans, meaning that they have actual power and actual opportunity here for them to, exercise their power. And in what is a truly, as I've hopefully laid out here, once in a lifetime, once in 100-year event. And if you can't get something as simple as a floor vote, just a vote on the floor of the House for universal health care in the middle of a pandemic that has killed 350,000 Americans and put at least 60 million people out of work at one time or another during this pandemic. That's 1 in every 3 workers in the country had to file for unemployment at some point over the course of this pandemic. Most of those people lost their health insurance when they lost their job, because in this crazy country of ours, we tie your health insurance to your employer. And if you lose your job, you lose your health insurance in this country. And we saw tens of millions of people losing their health insurance in the middle of a pandemic. Now, if you can't seize that moment and capture that moment and capture the outrage of the people in that moment and use that to actually affect change, to simply get, just a floor vote on universal health care with a democratically controlled House, right? Because that's not always the case. It's not always the case that you even have the ability to bring these things up for a vote, right? This is a democratically controlled House that we have right now. And, instead, the rhetoric out of AOC has been, beyond disappointing, in my opinion. It's really, it's gotten to a point that I'm gonna pull up some of our tweets in a moment and show you what I'm referring to here. Actually, let's just do that now. So I'll show you first. We're gonna take a look at a few things. First, I just want to show you some tweets from AOC that I think just are sort of indicative of her mindset in this. And so I just want to, let's take a look. We'll take a look here and see what AOC has had to say about this vote. So give me 1 sec while I pull that up. All right, just 1 sec here. All right. Okay. Yeah, it'll keep me on for a second. So this is a thread from AOC that she tweeted out yesterday, and she's talking about how she says, one of the first votes I ever cast broke with my party over House rules that strangled transformative legislation for working people plus climate. It was honestly terrifying. Now, Congressional Progressive Caucus has pushed these critical rule changes in House negotiations. Grateful for Representative McGovern's leadership. So she's referring to the fact that progressives in the House have gotten some rules changes that would potentially allow Medicare for all. It does not guarantee, it simply would allow for Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, or other big ticket agenda items to be exempted from the PAYGO system. And the PAYGO system is a system that is a self-inflicted system by the Democrats. They have self-imposed this austerity upon themselves to say that in order to fund in order to implement any large spending programs, they have to pay as you go, meaning you have to make sure that you offset that with either increased taxes or spending cuts in other places. Of course, that's a foolish right-wing dynamic to impose upon yourself, because it implies that somehow it ignores the fact that a lot of the types of programs that the left wants to implement are the kinds of programs that stimulate the economy or avoid save on costs in other areas that might not be directly tied to either taxes or government spending directly. And so, like, for instance, you implement Medicare for all, and people get preventative care more because they get regular checkups and they're going to the doctor more frequently, and it lowers the overall cost of healthcare for the entire country. You overall end up saving on it. but it's indirect. There's not some tax money coming in. So Democrats have burdened themselves with this rule that is a right-wing, austerity measure that says that they have to find the money elsewhere. Something like canceling student loan debt, right? You cancel student loan debt, in order to offset that program, you would have to find $1.4 trillion either in increased taxes, or you would have to do it through cutting spending elsewhere in the government. When the reality is that if you cancel the student loan debt, maybe you don't make it back up in the taxes, but what you do is you stimulate the economy so much that you can then pull in taxes from, because people are, companies can pay higher taxes because they're making more, higher incomes. People make higher incomes, essentially there would be a higher demand for jobs. People would be able to get paid more. They would end up paying higher taxes. So it's indirect. It's not like you can do it. You necessarily need to do it through a tax increase, whatever. So that whole point being, they're celebrating the fact that they've have a rule change that might allow for the Medicare for All and Green New Deal to be exempted from those PAYGO rules, which are rules that they have imposed upon themselves. So this isn't a repeal of PAYGO, which would be the very least that you could expect with this terrible rule of PAYGO. It's an absolutely absurd austerity measure. This doesn't get rid of that. This just says that the person in charge, the chairman of that committee, the budgetary committee, can choose to waive it if they so choose. That is a very minor measure here that's happening. She's now saying this. She goes on to say, AOC goes on to say in this thread on Twitter, she says, one of the first deep lessons I learned in the House is that process is policy. If you pass Medicare for All, Green New Deal, et cetera, with messed up process/rules, then it can be weaponized into austerity, led by rules requiring it to have insane tax hikes or service cuts tied to it that aren't applied to others. So, of course, sure, PAYGO is a terrible measure. Let's fight to repeal PAYGO entirely. We shouldn't have this measure anywhere on anything, and we damn sure shouldn't be leaving it up to the discretion of a establishment, Democrat who's the chair of the committee to be using their discretion on it. I mean, come on, you still have corporate Democrats chairing all of these committees. What's going to make them, waive the PAYGO rules? They love that stuff, right? Sure, I agree with her that this is something, but okay, let me keep going here. So she also says that process is policy. I'm starting to get annoyed by these little X is policy. First, it was Elizabeth Warren who says personnel is policy. Now AOC is telling us that it's process is policy. All of this stuff, ties into policy, right? And we all know it. And you don't have to try to be overly condescending or trivializing these things. Also, everything can't be policy. Policy is policy. All right. Nothing else is policy. Policy is policy. All right. Process is process. And personnel is personnel, right? And but I do understand the basic sentiment behind personnel being policy. I don't accept the sentiment of process being policy. Sure, there are processes that are part of policies. You can change those too. Anywho, I digress. So she goes on to say, so these rule changes are a big deal, and not only on healthcare. They are structural changes in the House that level the playing field for a full suite of flagship legislation, locks in that field for the next 2 years, and establishes precedents for after. This was not easy. So she's really, saying, oh, it's, this is so big. This is so massive and monumental. We got these rules changes that leave it still up to the discretion of the committee chair. And now is passing this off as some monumental victory that, anywho. So she goes on to say, and to be honest, and to be 100% honest, it was hard during this to be targeted plus marred as some sellout enemy of the people over a late tactical disagreement over one floor vote. Also a bummer to see figures excuse comments like F her and F anyone who protects her. That's not tone, that's violence. My response to that is no. This is a comedian directing some bad words at you, okay, that is tone. That is not violence, okay? He did not incite violence in any way, all right? Let's be real here, and let's stop using the language of violence, all right, when it does not apply, all right? Let's be real about what's violent, all right? What's violent is denying people health care in the middle of a fucking pandemic. That's violent, okay? And to not do every single thing available to you, to not use every single tactic available to you to fight for people to receive healthcare in the midst of a pandemic, that is violence, all right? That is real violence. People are going to die because of that, all right? Nobody is going to die because a comedian, some douchebag comedian on Twitter said some bad words, okay? Let's be fucking real here, all right? Malcolm X once called Martin Luther King on national television a European ass-licking Uncle Tom, okay? A European ass-licking Uncle Tom, all right? And Martin Luther King, the non-violence guy, didn't give up on, didn't give up the fight for what he believed in because, of Malcolm X's violent rhetoric, No, I'm sorry, all right? That is not violence, and let's not kid ourselves, all right? This is some douchebag comedian, screaming at a politician who is a powerful politician, one of the most powerful politicians, in fact, just based on the people power behind her, right? Behind AOC. One of the most powerful politicians in the country, a superstar on the left, makes $175,000 a year, $16,000 a month, $4,000 a week, okay? And has some of the best healthcare and health insurance that is available in this country. And that politician is telling us that it's violent for some tool bag comedian to be screaming. Listen, I don't like Jimmy Dore, and I think that there's a whole bunch of stuff that I will talk about Jimmy Dore and we can complain about, but let's save that till January 4th, because we've got a very limited window in which to enact this, and to use this leverage. And it's literally till tomorrow. We have until tomorrow to use our leverage to force this vote on Medicare for all. And this is a once in a lifetime moment. What are we waiting on to seize this? All right. What are we waiting on to seize this moment? She goes on to say, I'm just going to read this one last part of the thread. She says, on one hand, I am no stranger to abusive rhetoric and know that taking knocks comes with being an elected official. But as someone who prioritizes movement building and winning, creating something joyful that people actually want to be a part of is an important organized principle. I agree with that. Like, I've been saying that generally, but we can do that and still fight for the cause, the underlying cause, even if somebody that we don't like is the one that started it or is a key figure behind it. It doesn't matter. Do we believe in the policy behind it? We can ignore the personalities. We can agree on this and say, but there are a whole bunch of people that aren't the douchebag comedian. There's Cornel West, who we heard from at the beginning of the show. There's Breonna Joy Gray, who we're going to hear a clip from soon, and they've been fighting on this, and it just completely invisibilizes, erases out the Black left, activists and organizers who have been fighting for this. And so, and just completely ignores them and focuses in on this one, one comedian on Twitter, essentially, and on YouTube. And again, I do think that we need to create a welcoming space. I believe that Jimmy Dore's rhetoric goes too far. I do not think AOC is a sellout by any stretch of the imagination. She's not a sellout. What the issue is here, and what I think that we need to maybe recognize here on the left, is that is acknowledging the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there is, electoral politics is not a viable avenue for achieving the goals that we have, that maybe that's not where our fight needs to be. So I'm going to play a clip from, maybe we'll check out the full Cornel West clip soon. But before I do that, I want to play a clip here from Breonna Joy Gray. There was a march. It was a small march in Washington, D.C., organized by folks like Breonna Joy Gray and Nick Brana from the People's Party and Lee Camp from Redacted Tonight, a leftist comedian. And, covers the news, and they, led this small march, I believe, to the steps of Congress, and gave some speeches there. And so I wanted to just show a clip of Status Quo was there covering this, and I wanted to show a clip of Brianna Joy Gray speaking at that event, because I think that what Brianna Joy Gray had to say was really important, and it really struck a chord with me and resonated with me. And honestly, she just put into words a lot of what I've been feeling in this moment, because what I'm seeing is what I believe to be just a total lack of urgency from folks on the left, and a lack of awareness about the import of this moment. This is a vital moment, and it is not, moments like these do not come around every day. This is, come on, once in 100-year pandemic mixed with a once in 100-year economic depression, mixed with a once in 100-year block of progressives larger than the House majority. These are once in a lifetime opportunities, and we are completely losing sight of this because some personality that's attached to this is, people don't like them. And I honestly believe what's happening is that people simply, are unwilling to fight on the issue, and are, using, this comedian as a scapegoat to not have to, to not fight on the issue, and trying to focus all the attention around this comedian instead of focusing on the policy. Like, let's be bigger than that, right? We can all be bigger than that. I have made a calculated decision to not do any more coverage that focuses on the person and the personalities, and to instead focus on the actual policy. And if you check my Twitter, you'll see that that's all that I've been tweeting out about, over the course of the last few days, has been, about forcing the vote and ignoring the personalities behind it, and focusing on the policy behind it and the impact of the policy behind it, because people are suffering right now. People are suffering and they need help. And when are we going to get another moment like this? Are we going to wait for another, pandemic to devastate the country? Do we need to wait for another catastrophic economic crisis to roll around? Like, what is it that we think, if not now, then when? If not now, then when, right? So let's take a look at this. Take a listen here to a very short speech from Brianna Joy Gray, but I think it was very important what she talks about here. So we'll take a listen to Brianna Joy Gray, and then we'll come back and discuss. Okay.
We talked about these issues like nothing could wait. And now I'm realizing in this moment that a lot of the people that I respected in both the left media and in politics seem comfortable with the idea that the timeline is now being extended by years, if not decades. Yeah. And that has been a real mask-off moment for me and for a lot of us, I think. I feel like sometimes I was just the most naive person in the world because I actually believe the things that we said. There was a reason that I felt compelled to leave a fairly comfortable job to go into left journalism, because I believe that certain things needed to be said because we couldn't wait. And there was a reason that I left my job in journalism that I loved and believed in to go and join a campaign and give up a certain amount of security, because I believed that it was worth it for what we were fighting for at the end of the day was worth it. And now to hear that a lot of people seem to believe that we could extend these timelines, that the things that we said was just mere sloganeering, is really disheartening. Oh. But what is heartening is seeing how many of you are willing to stand up and keep saying what is right and keep speaking truth to power no matter what the consequences are.
The U.S. is the only industrialized.
All right, so that was Brianna Joy Gray there speaking at a Force the Vote march in D.C., and a few things that she said there. She said, she just points out that we used to talk about these issues like there was, when I joined into this movement, and I joined into this movement because it resonated with me when we spoke about these issues, and we said, what do we want? Medicare for all. When do we want it? right now, right? And we demanded that it be right now and that we were done waiting, right? We were done with the incrementalism and the waiting on a better time, waiting for a better season. We were done with that, and that the moment was now, and that we were going to fight for this, because we were facing existential crises, existential, meaning are threatening our ability to continue to exist. Okay, that's what these crises that we're saying these are existential crises. But then the same people that have had this rhetoric and that I considered allies, and honestly, this has been very discouraging for me. I've become very discouraged and very, it's been very disheartening, demoralizing, discouraging to see the lack of urgency on the left from people that I consider allies on the left, from folks that I, held in high regard. I won't say looked up to, but held in high regard. Peers in independent progressive media, the TYTs and the Sam Cedar and Nomiki Konst and Nomiki Konst, and folks that I really did consider allies in this, that have just completely taken a backseat and said, oh no, the time isn't now. Oh, this is all performative. This is just all performative. Nothing's going to come of this. This has no value to us. And, all of a sudden, these same people that have been, fighting, that I've been fighting side by side with, who we've been saying this whole time that, they've been having the urgency of now. And I'm starting to get the feeling that, like, for me, like, I don't know, I try not to make it like personal and trying not to personalize this, but I think I'm going to have to personalize some of this tonight, because I'm unemployed. I'm unemployed because I've spoken out, and I've gotten, I've put my own career at risk speaking out on these issues, because I thought that they mattered, and I thought that everybody else had the same sense of urgency that I did, and that it was worth taking these massive risks. I had a six-figure job. I had six-figure jobs that I turned my back on, that I left, that I was pushed out of, because I spoke out and spoke up against what I considered, injustice in the workplace, in capitalism, the injustices of capitalism. And I as a Black American, just already got the whole damn system set up against you. And I still go and I feel like what I did, stuck my neck out there to try to, because I believe that this was the right thing to do, and that this was the fight to fight in. And now those same people that I believed in are telling me that, oh no, now's not the time, are willing to, as Breonna Joy Gray pointed out, extend the timeline, not just by years, but potentially by decades. If you don't recognize this moment and the importance and just once in a lifetime nature of this moment, then you are seriously missing. You are missing something, and you're missing something very important. And I just urge you to please reconsider. If you are not totally behind the movement to force the vote for Medicare for all, and I believe that we need to demand more than that. I believe in at least that, plus the list of demands laid out by David Sirota in his Jacobin article. I've gone over it multiple times on the show now, but I believe we need to demand more. We should demand, we should have gotten rid of PAYGO entirely with this. We could get rid of PAYGO. That's foolish, and the people don't support it. But come on, we're not even willing to have the politicians to fight to get the politicians to go on record to just do their damn jobs. There are literally 535 people in this entire fucking country that have the ability, whose job it is to just simply vote on issues that matter. That's your fucking job, okay? That's their fucking job in Congress, and they're supposed to vote on the issues that matter. And they're literally, with a democratically controlled House, we have a policy that has 88% support in recent polls over the summer, all right, done by like Fox News, okay? 88% support from Democrats, all right, on the issue of Medicare for all. 70% from independents, over 50% from Republicans. So you are talking about a majority of Americans that support this issue, we can't even get a vote on that critical issue of healthcare, of providing universal healthcare in the middle of a pandemic that has killed 350,000 people, set on pace to kill at least 500,000 people within a year. And and economic depression that has seen 60 million people filing for unemployment in the past, 9 months, 1 in every 3 workers filing for unemployment in the last 9 months, losing their health insurance in the midst of a pandemic, losing jobs and their health insurance. And we don't think that we can't get a vote on a popular policy like that with a democratically controlled House. Then when will we ever? When is the moment? To all the people that say now's not the time, what is your strategy? What is your strategy for getting us closer to Medicare for all in the next 2 years, 4 years, 10 years even? Like, what is it? What do you see? And because the people that are saying that they're against it, nobody has given me a distinctive, meaningful strategy, that this somehow harms. How does doing this in any way harm your strategy? How does it interfere with your strategy in any way? Like, we really need to have this debate out. And I wish that this were a busier stream. I wish that there were more people in the chat, because I really wanted to engage on this issue, because it's unfortunate. I just wish I had a bigger platform. I really do. I wish I had a bigger platform that I could actually impact this in some way and affect change in some way. And honestly, this has just made me feel a sense of hopelessness, honestly, if I'm being all the way real. I have thought in the same way that Brianna Joy Gray has, said she's been thinking recently, like, maybe it's too far gone. Maybe this movement isn't what I thought it was. And, maybe there is no hope in what we're trying to do with electoral politics. And honestly, I mean, I was one of the first 300 people to ever donate to AOC. Most of my social media pictures, it's a picture of me, with AOC, before her primary election versus Joe Crowley, and she signed this poster for me then that said, thank you for, and it said, like, thank you for helping me to achieve my dreams. I'm sure one day you'll be able to achieve yours, essentially. And my dreams are just securing these basic human rights for the masses of people, right? That's my dreams, all right. And so helping her find, secure her dreams or whatever. That was a way of helping me, to secure my dreams or whatever. And so it's just to act like, I'm some sort of like I'm somehow, to paint me as some, like, maybe, somehow misogynist or anti-AOC in some way would be absurd. It would be insane. I'm literally, one of her earliest supporters. I phone banked for her. I freaking, and I literally, I changed people's minds. I got people that said they weren't going to vote, and then they were, until they talked to me, and then they were going to vote. Some of the most, endearing conversations I've ever had in my life. Just really great stuff. But, phone banked, donated like hundreds of dollars to her campaign when I was unemployed and struggling. All right. And I have been an avid supporter of AOC's throughout her entire career. So to paint me as somehow anti-AOC would be just utterly absurd. It would be utterly absurd and just not based in fact, just completely not based in fact in any way. So I am not anti-AOC, but what I am acknowledging now, and what I'm coming to realize in this moment, is that electoral politics, the entire system, we keep on saying it's a systemic problem. And listen, we thought that the problem was, the money in politics, right? The financial structure, right? In the fundraising structure of Congress. Now, I think that it was one of the issues. And I definitely think that's why I don't think that AOC is a sellout, because she's not selling out to, she's not going and taking some money from the pharmaceutical industry all of a sudden. Who are we kidding? She's not. She's absolutely not, right? She is just simply, I think what the issue is that what Kyle Kulinski says is these politicians get what he calls Washington brain, right? And I think that what it is that it's the system, right? The system and the establishment is so It's such a machine that even if we put these uncorrupted politicians into office, even it turns out that it wasn't just the funding structure that was the only problem with Congress, right? The problem is that it's a really gross machine, and the establishment, there's a lot of power in that machine, and it taints people. It taints people. Being inside, it taints people. It's a lot easier to be a bomb thrower and a truth teller, a radical truth teller, when you're on the outside looking in, right? When you're fighting from the outside, right? But once people get into that system, I'm just seeing, I with AOC, the longer she's in that system, the more I'm seeing her rhetoric, changing, her willingness to accept incrementalism, her lack of urgency. Come on, like AOC, can AOC put herself in the shoes of AOC the bartender? Like, has she forgotten what AOC the bartender would be feeling like right now? Imagine if AOC was still AOC the bartender. Imagine what her rhetoric would be. Do you think that AOC the bartender wouldn't be supporting the idea of forcing a vote, withholding your vote from Nancy Pelosi, who's a terrible speaker? We lost seats under Donald Trump. They lost seats in the House. All right. Now have the narrowest margin in the House in over 100 years. All right. Since the 19th century. All right. We have the narrowest margin in the House. That's under Nancy Pelosi's speakership. All right. Nobody else. I saw Marianne Williamson did an interview with Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball on their new show, Crystal, Kyle, and Friends. And it's a great interview. And she talked about how, sorry, lost my train of thought, whatever, moving along. Imagine if AOC could put herself in the shoes of AOC the bartender, right? That would be New York City bartender in the middle of this pandemic. Imagine that, right? Most bars have had to shut down, right? Most of those employees were furloughed or lost jobs, right? Those are the people that are unemployed right now, right? Bartenders in particular, restaurant workers, especially, of course, but also bartenders. She would be on the front lines. She would have two options. Either she'd have been fired by now, or she would have been an essential worker getting no type of hazard pay while risking her life, right? Instead, she's being paid $175,000 a year, all right? She has the best health care and health insurance that money can buy, right? And it's taxpayer funded, right? She's got taxpayer funded health insurance and health care, right? And she $175,000 a year, and she's already received the vaccine for COVID, right? Like, AOC the bartender doesn't get vaccinated for COVID at this point. She'd be unvaccinated on the front lines of this, risking her life, possibly just one of the hundreds of thousands dead. Who knows? That's what happens. That's what happens when you're just a worker, when you're just a working class person, right? But she's completely lost the urgency of AOC the bartender. She's lost sight of what that outsider would have been calling for. When AOC got into Congress, she said that she was willing to be a one-term congressperson, all right? If it meant fighting for what she believed in, all right? Well, this is a moment where you have to be willing to stick out your neck. And let's be real, AOC is at no risk of losing her seat. She has no risk. She is under no threat of losing her seat. What is the risk? Can anyone who disagrees with the Force the Vote movement, please, in the comments, please, if you disagree with the Force the Vote movement, can you please tell me what you think the consequences of this? What is the negative consequences of something like this? All right, like, please, I need to understand your position here. All right, because I think that this can and will have lasting impact on the left, because I'll tell you, I think that it's made me, like, just for this show, I have had to completely reconsider what I'm doing here. Like, I don't know if this is what I'm going to pursue any longer. Like, I don't know if this is the right place to fight any longer, because honestly, I feel like a grifter talking about electoral politics any longer. If this is what comes of it, if this is what this machine is capable of doing, that it's capable of, not corrupting the mind of, not corrupting in the sense of like financial, corruption, but corrupting the mind of or brainwashing somebody like an AOC, who I truly believe in and know that she has pure intentions. I know her intentions are pure. I know she wants Medicare for all. I simply believe that she does not have the sense of urgency, that she should have for this moment. And it's going to cost us, not just in this fight, but this was a pivotal moment for the left, because it wasn't just about this floor vote, but it was also about teaching these progressives the power that they have and getting them to actually use that power. If you don't use that power now, when will you use the power? I hope did everybody, did we hear the clip from Cornel West? You got to recognize when to use this power, and the time is now. This is the time to use that power. All right. So this is very discouraging, is all I can say. It feels like I feel like maybe I was naive, like Breonna Joy Gray said. Maybe we're being naive to think that the folks on the left had the same sense of urgency. I think a lot of folks are not uncomfortable enough. Sad, unfortunately to say, that some folks are comfortable enough in this moment, especially of the online left that I happen to be, in my bubble. I think that a lot of them might just be too comfortable and lack the sense of urgency and the awareness of this moment and what this moment is, and the unique opportunity that we have in this moment, because these are catastrophic crises that we're undergoing, and you got to seize these moments. If we don't seize this moment, then when? If not now, then when? I'm going to take a few comments and then we'll see what else we want to get to. Let's see. What Up America says, it's a lot like how Kamala Harris and Warren and Tulsi supported Medicare for all until there was pressure from the establishment. Yeah, absolutely. Very reminiscent of that. That sort of tepid, support for something. There's a big difference between believing in something and fighting for something. There's a gulf between those two. All right. You can believe in something. You can want something. It's very different to fight for something. All right. And fighting means sticking your neck out there. All right. Fighting means sometimes you got to stick your neck out on the line. All right. And I just don't see a lot of risk for these progressives right now with doing this. There's very little risk to this, and there's so much benefit to gain in this moment. And I just don't know when another moment like this is going to arise. I don't see it. So great point. What up? Absolutely agree that this is very reminiscent of that. When you tout something, when you're when you become a spokesperson for a cause, you have a lot of responsibility lying on your shoulders in that. And I think that you can do irreparable damage by infecting people with this, what Martin Luther King called the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. So, he said, now is not the time to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. That's what this is. This is AOC telling us we got to do gradual steps. We're going to have to use, they're trying to do like behind the scenes backdoor deals with Nancy Pelosi that us simple, activists, we just can't understand this. They're going to do this backroom deals and, behind the scenes stuff. And that's where the real power is happening. And, AOC, the outsider, would never have agreed with something like that. And honestly, I want to believe in folks like Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and Nina Turner, but this is really shaken my faith in all of those folks to its core. I mean, I showed the clips recently on the show of Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman doing really tepid, support for this, and really just not committing and doing sort of giving these politician-y answers of not telling people what you actually believe in. That's a politician-y thing to do, to just not, when you're asked a question and you dodge the question, you don't actually give your stance on a position. And I saw Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman do that recently. And then, Nina Turner went on Rising on the Hill, and she said that she would defer to her colleagues like AOC and the Squad on things like this. And, on this fight, when she was asked, would you support the fight? Do you support the fight to force a vote on Medicare for all. And she was a little stronger on the issue, but she's further outside, right? She's not been elected into Congress yet. And I feel like the closer you get into Congress, the closer you get into the power structures, the more, sort of corrupted your brain becomes with this idea of like establishment politics, right? And the thing is, you will never beat Pelosi at her own game, all right? I was talking to somebody about this earlier, Kwame from Race Fist Media. I was talking to him about this earlier, and he gave a great analogy. And he was like, if I'm in some, I'm not going to go and challenge Mike Tyson to a boxing match. He's like, if I'm going to challenge Mike Tyson, it'll be like to a round of like Fight Night, the video game. He's like, because I got some skills there and I could probably whoop him there. But I'm not going to try to fight Mike Tyson in his arena, where he's most comfortable, right? Because he will knock us all out, right? That's where he's comfortable. That's where he's, where he is, has his strengths and where I have my weaknesses, right? I'm not going to try to fight, Mike Tyson on his terms, right? That would be foolish, right? That's like trying to go fight Pelosi on her terms, trying to fight Pelosi with backroom deals. That's how she butters her bread. That is how she has maintained power for decades, all right, is those backroom deals. That's where she butters her bread, and she will not lose those fights. So do not try to fight Pelosi in the backroom deals. That's not where you have power, AOC. That is not where you have power, members of the squad, all right? That's not where your power lies. Your power lies in the people. That is where your power lies. And when you lose sight of that, you lose sight of the reason that you were sent into the halls of Congress in the first place, all right? And I don't think that these people are necessarily like bad people. They're decent people. They're good people. They're well-meaning, well-intentioned people. I just think that the system might be so thoroughly corrupted that it can destroy even our best and our brightest, all right? And that trying to play an inside game might not be possible with this system that we've set up at this point. And I think it's this year, 2021, might need to be the year that the left needs to begin to reckon with the fact that electoral politics might not be the place for us to lead the charge in our fight. It is labor. Labor is where the fight must happen. And that is going to be, if I do anything with this show, it is going to be to focus on the fight that we can have in labor and in the labor movement, because I think that is the only way we are going to exercise the power that we need and get the, bring about the changes that are absolutely critical in this moment. So I think nothing less than a general strike and a massive labor movement are going to be the only things that move this country forward, sadly. And sure, it's good. Go vote for more progressive politicians. But if that's the whole place that we're dumping all of our money and our time and our energy is 100% in electoral politics, and I mean that even for myself as somebody covering the news, if that's where we're pouring the majority of our time, I believe that it may be a waste of our time and energy and effort. All right. And it hurts me to admit that, but it's a very realistic, possibility that we need to reckon with. And I think the left has to start to have very serious conversations out and start to really decide, is there any hope in electoral politics if this is the outcome of getting these people and fighting so hard? I mean, this has been the fight that I've fought for the past 4 years, has been in trying to move progressives in. I've spent thousands of dollars as an unemployed person. I told myself that it was the biggest, that I was investing all my money into these people, that I was investing in them because I believed that they were going to turn around and they were going to invest it back in us. And I am not seeing that any sort of return on my investment at this point. I do not feel a return on my investment. So I'm going to jump to some more comments here. Sorry that I got a little bit away from them. I see that we're getting some comments and I appreciate the engagement. This is what I was really hoping for, because I need to talk to folks right now. Like, we need to have some conversations here on the left, because what's going on right now is really disheartening. So Skeptical Mantis, shout out to Skeptical Mantis, by the way. Maybe I want to maybe play a video of Skeptical Mantis. Actually, he has a great video on his channel where he went to AOC's office and demanded, all right, and he did it in a really good way. Like, kudos to you. Your patience in that video was just, absolutely totally impressive and commendable. All right. So your patience was commendable. And he was very, respectful in his approach. And I think that, and he went and he made his voice heard. And I think that is the kind of fight that we need to be fighting. And so massive shout out to Skeptical for doing what you did and for, taking the fight to the front lines. And so that was really dope. And shout out to Skeptical. You can check out that video on his channel of him visiting AOC's office and speaking with some of our staffers and really pushing them on the issue of forcing a vote for Medicare for all. So kudos to you, Skeptical. Skeptical says, AOC backed away from every major promise she made in her campaign. Anybody defending that is clearly putting personality above policy. Yeah, I think, I don't want to be too hyperbolic. I don't think that she's, necessarily backed away from, but maybe that is, I'm not going to tell police that, maybe that is accurate to say, this is a backing away from, from promises that she made. She promised that she would fight against establishment corporate Democrats, right? That's what she said that was going to be a part of her fight, was fighting against Nancy Pelosi. This is not what fighting against Nancy Pelosi looks like. All right. So Jesse Hafner, what's up, Jesse? I think that's a first-time commenter. Great to have you here, Jesse. Thanks for joining us. Please, if you haven't done so already, hit the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I need you to subscribe. Let's get over 1,300 subscribers. I think we're 3 subscribers away from 1,300 subscribers on the channel. Please, if you're not already subscribed, please immediately hit the subscribe button below. All right. Help us get across the line to 1,300. Help us hit our first 1,300 subscribers tonight on this stream. All right. Let's hit 1,300 on this live stream. So Jesse Hafner says, I completely agree with you right now. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate that. Corey Saylor says they feel the risk is the vote will fail and make progressives look bad. The opposite is true. It will look like progressives are the only people in Washington fighting to get health care. Absolutely correct. This is a point that I want to make too, is that the only person that this could hurt is a monster who would vote against providing all people health care in the middle of a pandemic. I'm sorry, but those are the exact people I want to be hurting. All right. Those are the exact politicians we need to be hurting because they are the ones standing in the way of our progress. All right. And so this absolutely could not hurt progressives. It doesn't matter if it fails. If it fails, it's not the fault of the progressives who voted for it. If it fails, it's the fault of the so-called moderates and centrists. How moderate is it to deny people health care in the middle of a fucking pandemic that killed 350,000 people? How moderate are you? You are extreme. You are radical. If you don't think people should have health care in the middle of a pandemic, you're the radical. You're the extremist, okay? So, the idea that it could somehow make progressives look bad to fight and force a vote on it. No, sorry. You would be the only ones coming out of this looking like decent human beings, all right? You're the only ones who stand to gain in every possible way from this. It helps you to bolster your numbers in the upcoming elections in 2022. If you go into 2022 midterms and you didn't even get people a vote on universal health care in the middle of a pandemic, what do you think is going to happen across the country? You don't think that people are going to start to lose their faith in supporting even progressives in Congress? You don't think that that's going to shake people's faith a little bit? I'll tell you, you ain't getting a dime from me in 2022 if we don't even get a floor vote on Medicare for all. I'm done donating a single dime to electoral politics. I'm done. I'm not wasting another dollar as an unemployed, housing insecure person. I am suffering. I'm struggling. I absolutely cannot afford to sink any more of my, of what little bit of money that I have into these, nothing movements that go absolutely nowhere. Was this not the moment that all of this was for? Is this not the moment that everything that we've been fighting for the last 4 years was for? So I totally agree, Corey. Totally agree. They'll come out of this looking like the only people with a soul in Congress. Their approval ratings will go up. Anyone that votes against it will have, that will set up all the attack ads that we need to run against those centrists, so-called centrists, right-wing Democrats, conservative Democrats in the primaries in 2022. So, it also, lets Pelosi and the corporate Democrats and the establishment know that progressives are fighters and that they are going to fight them, and they will actually use their leverage and use their power to fight them. In that it sends a shot across the bow of the establishment. All right. And it puts them on notice for the next 2 to 4 years and beyond. Right. That the left is something that they were going to have to reckon with. I think that moment is going to be lost. It sounds like AOC and other in the squad are signaling that they don't intend to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi. They appear to be folding on this. And if they do, I think that is going to be catastrophic and will do irreparable damage on the left. So thank you for the comment, Corey. That was a great point. Skeptical Mantis says, relying on secret backroom deals is the exact opposite of mobilizing the masses to create leverage. 100%. We are supposed the whole, it was, we have the people, they have, they have the money, we have the people, right? So why are we doing the backroom deals that are money, power deals, these backroom deals? Why are we not using the people power that we have, right? Why are we not using the only power that progressive legislators have, which is the backing of the people? So I totally agree with you. The backroom deal stuff is just, it's gross. And this little we got a house rule changed is a joke. Come on. It's a total fucking joke. Jimmy Dore may be a comedian, but AOC is the biggest fucking joke here. I'm sorry, not sorry. All right. Corey Saylor says, especially with AOC's massive following, she can use the bully pulpit to drive the narrative and organize a movement. Unfortunately, she's been blinded by swamp moss. Yes, that, man, the bully pulpit, this is all the power that the left has, and we are not using the power that we have, right? So she has a massive online following, just a massive following in general. If she supported this, it would have been enough to get all the popular support that we needed as well to go along with it. By her being against it, that put all of her supporters in a position to then be against it, right? And all of a sudden it became about personalities, AOC versus Jimmy Dore, right? I mean, even I did a video that was like AOC versus Jimmy Dore versus David Sirota versus, and it's just like, that was a mistake, but to even focus on the personalities behind it, right, and not the policy behind the issue, right? But it's like it was a personality versus personality thing instead of being about the policy at the end of the day and focusing on the policy. And I think that she had all the power necessary to completely shift the narrative on this and get the popular backing that we needed. Instead, I think that, with her taking the position that she took, it divided the left, unfortunately, and created an obstacle that was insurmountable in the end. It appears, it's not too late. We still have a day left. Call your, tweet out to the squad, at them and everything that you're tweeting on #ForceTheVote. Call your reps if you're in a district with one of these progressive representatives. Please call them. Show up at their doors. Show up at their offices. Demand a vote on Medicare for all. Do not let them, ignore and miss out on this once in a lifetime opportunity that's in front of us. Jesse Hafner says, seriously, if we don't get a floor vote right now, we won't get another for 4 years. Yeah, and who's to say that we're getting one in 4 years? My honest assessment is that if history bears out, all right, if just history repeats itself as it so often tends to do, historically, we know what happens in midterm elections for the opposition party, right? The opposition party makes gains in midterm elections, all right? If that happens, the Democrats are very likely to lose control of the House in 2022. And certainly by 2024, all right? They will likely lose control of not just the House in 2022, but they are very likely, in my opinion, with 4 years of getting nothing done while people suffer, while we have another, economic depression unlike anything we've experienced in our entire lifetimes. And we, with 500,000 Americans dead from COVID-19, if I believe that we stand to lose the House in 2022 and to lose the White House in 2024. All right. We have a very serious chance of doing that if we have 4 years of ineffectiveness and, upholding the status quo, Obama 2.0, bailing out the banks and corporations while letting working class and poor people suffer, then I can all but guarantee that we get wiped out, that Democrats I'm done with the that Democrats get wiped out in the midterm elections, Democrats lose the House of Representatives, and then in 2024, we lose the White House. So the idea that even in 4 years from now, that we're going to get this opportunity again, sadly, Jesse, I don't even think that that's even in the cards. I don't think you can't tell me that it's going to happen 4 years from now. I don't think. And then just think of all the machinations and all the complexities that then spiral into that. If that happens, 8 years from now, 12 years from now, what we're talking about could slow the movement down by decades, not just years, but decades. And that's what Breonna Joy Gray said in her speech there. I hope everyone caught that. I'm happy to play it again if folks didn't catch Breonna Joy Gray talking about it. But, I played the clip a little bit earlier. Breonna Joy Gray saying that this is some people seem willing to let this movement be delayed, not just to delay this timeline, not just by, days or weeks or months, by years or even decades. All right. And I think that this has a serious potential to be to have decades long repercussions. All right. And I just think it's such a failure of the left that if we miss this moment, if we miss out on seizing this crucial opportunity, and all signs point to that happening tomorrow. All right. Skeptical Mantis says, I'm glad your faith is being shaken in electoral politics. It's a scam. We need to build a real revolution. Do trust me. I mean, my faith in electoral politics, it's not just being shaken. It's been shaken for a long time. I just don't say it publicly because I've been thinking that, okay, maybe there is some sliver of hope. And if we just fight this way, because I do believe that certain things are going to require us to take power in electoral politics. Like, you can't enact Medicare for all without electoral power. We will not get universal health care without electoral power. I just fear that I worry that we can't build up the electoral power first. We have to build the labor movement first, and then and let the electoral politics be secondary to all that. And I felt that. I mean, the point of my show is all about building democracy in the workplace. I wanted to build a media outlet that I was, not just, talking the talk, but walking the walk, right? I'm trying to build a democratic workplace. That was my goal. My whole intention is, how do I actually, bring about the change? And I believe that it's not really going to happen through the electoral politics. I say this all the time. I think really is that I believe that it's going to happen through building democracy in the workplace, because electoral politics, democracy isn't happening there, and democracy is the thing that we need in order to allow the voice of the people to be heard. The only way the voice of the people will ever effectively be heard is through radical democracy, right? A radical, more direct democracy. And so my fight is I've believe that it's building democratic workplaces. I believe that is the fight that we have to have out, because I think that then you can just, in your very small little place, it's like the most local form of politics you can have. Everybody says go into local politics. I do believe less national politics, more local politics. The more local, the better, probably at this point. And I don't think it gets any more local than your workplace, right? That's where you spend the majority of your waking hours every day, 8 hours a day for most people, 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. At least for most people, and I think that's the place that we can actually affect the most change. And so, yeah, I'm a huge supporter of the Black Socialists of America, the Black Socialists in America. I'm a member of the Black Socialists in America. Check them out at I forget their website. I always blank on their website. I think it's blacksocialist.org. And or blacksocialist.us, I believe. And so the Black Socialists in America, and they are completely, they've completely essentially given up on electoral politics. They've had discussions with AOC, but they do not focus on electoral politics. And I wanted to find a way that I could contribute, and this is what I'm capable of doing. This is what I have the capacity for right now. And I wanted to do my part while also trying to build democracy, democratic workplaces, and try to push that movement forward. But sadly, I worry that unfortunately it might not be sustainable, because I worry that if you don't talk about electoral politics, that there's not much of an audience for that right now. And so I don't know that what I'm doing here is going to be sustainable, unfortunately, even though I think that it's a meaningful, valuable thing that I care about. I just don't know that it's literally sustainable, that I can continue to do this. I've run out of unemployment. I'm unemployed. I have no more unemployment checks coming in. I've run through all of my unemployment. I've been unemployed for over a year now. I've been unemployed. I'm housing insecure. And I'm, I need income. I need income desperately. And what I need to do in order to get income is probably go back into software engineering. And that will take up all of my time, and means that if I'm doing that, I have to do that full time, and I can't do this work, which is the work that I find meaningful and valuable. And sadly, I worry that if I don't talk about electoral politics, there's not enough of an audience for it. And so I don't want to feel like I'm grifting over here. And so I'm starting to feel like maybe if I continue forward on talking about electoral politics, that I'm going to feel like a grifter if I don't really believe that there's any hope to actually achieve these outcomes through electoral politics. So, but your point taken though, yes, it has been further shaken for certain, and not just in electoral politics, but honestly, in the left movement, like not just electoral politics, I want to make that clear, but like the entire left movement, because I think the left movement in the United States is largely centered around electoral politics, sadly. So it's just my voice of my concerns here. Jesse Hafner says, I don't think people realize how drastically we need to change our society in order to stave off our own extinction based on how slow they are moving on something that's simple. Yeah, totally. Just 100% agree with you, Jesse. 100% agree with you. What Up America says, one major benefit of forcing the vote would be a news cycle around Medicare for All. Absolutely. You could not just force a vote on Medicare for All, but they could force hearings on Medicare for All. They could force them to hold hearings in the House of Representatives. We would have experts coming in to talk about Medicare for All. I mean, what you're talking about is centering Medicare for All, is centering a conversation around Medicare for All. And you had all of these people told us, vote for Joe Biden, and then after he's elected, we're going to push him to the left. Well, isn't this how we push him to the left? How the hell else are we going to push him to the left other than things like this, actions like this, taking actions like this? This is how you push him to the left. But those people are all brunching. All right. Jesse says, we need massive changes within the next couple of decades, and then we have supposed progressives willing to wait 4 years before we can even get a floor vote on Medicare for All. And honestly, Jesse, I don't even think saying floor vote on Medicare for All in 4 years we have to take into account the very likely outcome that we lose the House in 2022, that we lose the House, and that we lose the White House in 2024. If we have, 4 years of Joe Biden doing more of the same and, status quo stuff with people suffering through the worst, depression of our lifetimes. All right. The greatest depression in US history. All right. So if that's the case, I think that we are we stand to lose in 2022 and in 2024. And then there's no chance. And then there's, or even if we have the House and we lose the White House, then they'll just do a vote that means nothing, because they'll just get vetoed in the end, and then that goes nowhere. We have to use the power that we have when we have it to prove to people that we're willing to fight for them, so that they're willing to continue to fight with us, right? Because it's really dispiriting to have an opportunity like this and to miss out on it. All right, so Skeptical Manta says, Jesse agreed, not enough progressives talk about the threat of extinction. Yeah, like we're talking about existential crises, as I said earlier, and I'm not seeing existential urgency on the part of the squad and What Up America says, we need to focus more on direct action, Kamali. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. I think that the direct action that I think that I'm going to begin to focus on is labor, direct action through labor, labor movements, general strike. I believe a general strike is the only thing that will move move these policies forward, is a general strike. 250 million workers are on strike in India right now. All right. And it doesn't even get covered on mainstream media. And that's part of why I want to have, a show like this, so that we can cover that more. But, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree that we need to focus more on direct action. I think that the direct action should come through labor, because that's where the left has all their power. And it's why I think that, focusing on things like democracy in the workplace is important, because our power is in labor. And so we have to kind of focus on labor first, because that's where we have, outsized power. Jesse says, skeptical. I completely agree with you about electoralism. It cannot, nor has it ever been the way to achieve substantive change in our country. Yes, I totally agree. And any meaningful legislation has come from the bottom, has gone from the bottom up, grassroots movements that fought for change. And it's been strong grassroots labor movements in particular. The socialists, the communists, and the trade unionists got together and they pushed FDR to the left. All right. FDR was not some, radical leftist. All right. He was a moderate, a centrist, essentially. And he was pushed left by popular, labor movements, essentially. Again, the socialists, the communists, and the trade unionists joined forces to push FDR. And that's how we got unemployment insurance, Social Security in this country, the GI Bill. Those all came through, popular grassroots movements and third-party politics, right? Like the Socialist Party were the ones that fought for Social Security. All right. So fighting within the two-party system and fighting in electoral politics, it just might not be a fight worth fighting. And if history is, if history bears out again, then that will hold true, that it's only through popular grassroots movements that we are going to move anything in this country. And I don't think going out and protesting, anything like that's not a sustained protest and around labor protests, I don't think it's enough. Like doing these social justice protests, sorry, not working. It's not working. We did the George Floyd protest all year, all summer. It just didn't move policy one bit. All right. It didn't move policy one bit. I think the only, grassroots movements that are going to matter is if these are labor backed movements. All right. So that's where we got to fight. That's where the fight has to happen. General strike. And I don't want to hear, real quick, I hear this a lot too. This is part where I say, I think that there's just a certain, that the left might not be serious about what we're talking about. Like the left might not be as serious as we need to be, because I see it happen. I see it come up a lot. And when you talk about going on strike and stuff, I see a lot of leftists that come out and they're like, oh, some of these leftists shitting on other people that can't, that are incapable of going on strike, because they're they're one step away from destitution. Well, I got news for you. 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. All right. We're all one firing, lost job away from crises. All right. We're all there. All right. And some of us, especially, disproportionately Black and brown, indigenous, trans folks, some of us are suffering disproportionately, and we're already totally fucked. All right. We're they're just already totally fucked in the system. All right. And so, this idea that that there's any amount of time to wait on this is just, to lack urgency on this. It's like the people are suffering right now, and just not seeing the sense of urgency around it that we need to be, unfortunately. So, yeah, lost my train of thought there a little bit, but as you can see, my mind's racing a mile a minute here. But all right, going to try to wrap this up soon. We'll take a few more comments here. So, all right. Skeptical says, we also protested at AOC's office a few days ago. There's a short video on my channel. Awesome. We'll check that out. Skeptical, that's really great. Great work there, Skeptical. Keep that up. Appreciate you doing that. That is the kind of direct action that we need to be taking. And so, shout out to Skeptical for doing that work. Keep at it. Mark McKeever says, the masses don't follow politics like some here, probably, I think is what Mark was saying there. And yeah, I agree that, the masses are definitely not following along with this and don't follow politics. And it's not through no fault of their own, right? I mean, sorry. I just remember what I was making the point on real quick. So I was making the point about, people living paycheck to paycheck, and how on the left I hear some people talk about how, we can't go on strike, we can't do a general strike, so many of us, like, we're not going to be able to general strike because, like, people are hurting and they're one step away from destitution. And the problem is that so many of us, we've already been completely fucked out of the system, and we don't even got a paycheck coming in. We're already out of it, right? So the people that use, what about them? What about the people that get fired from their jobs, right? Then it's too late. Then you don't have the power to strike, right? You lose your labor power when you lose your job, right? So we can't wait until another crisis, another massive historic unemployment. Listen, you can lose your job by choice in a strike, or you can lose it, involuntarily by just being fired in the midst of a pandemic or whatever the hell the case is, right? And we shouldn't, we have to recognize that that's what solidarity looks like, and we're going to have to make some sacrifices ourselves, and it might cause us some pain, but we all have to be willing to take on and to bear a little bit of that short-term pain for the long-term, gains that we can make for it, right? And it's going to take some sacrifice. And the problem is, it's either this now, a few of us, risk losing our jobs, lose some potential income. And listen, we could talk about mutual aid networks, and I'm all for, building up mutual aid networks, and I totally support that idea. But where the hell are the mutual aid networks right now? Have we started anything like that? Are we doing any development of mutual aid networks right now? All these people with all their organizing power, what mutual aid networks have we developed on the left? Where is that at? Where do we have any sort of infrastructural, support for, mutual aid networks? It's just not there, right? And if we wait around for things like that to happen, we'll be waiting forever, right? It's never going to come. So we are going to have to take some serious risks. And sure, listen, I'm not, if you are just absolutely against it, and you absolutely are just right up against it, and you cannot, afford to strike, so be it. But listen, keep in mind that nobody can afford to strike, all right? We're all, 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and the ones that aren't, they ain't on our side. They ain't fighting with us, all right? So the people that are going to be fighting with us, we're all struggling. We're all a paycheck away from destitution, all right? All of us, all right? None of us have the privilege of being able to strike. But we're going to have to sacrifice something. We got to get ready to sacrifice some stuff on the left. And I'm telling you, I've seen the discourse on the left, people doing this like, oh, lefties are so bad for shitting on people that can't strike. And it's like, no, come on. We gotta recognize that some pain, it requires some pain, right? Sacrifice, right? In order to fight for the things that we believe in. So just wanted to speak to that discourse. All right. So Jesse says, I think a lot of progressive media is against this because they hate Jimmy Dore. Don't get me wrong, he has anger issues, and I don't agree with everything he says. But he's been right far more often than most, and Jimmy is definitely right on this. And too many of them have made it about him and aren't able to get the fuck over the fact that he started this. So they instead attack him and those who support this push. Yeah, and that's the sad thing, is that I think that this focus on Jimmy Dore. Listen, I did a whole video, like a 2-hour segment, where I talked about the fact that I do not agree with Jimmy Dore, his rhetoric on this, in many regards, in many areas, trying to, threatening to cancel Tim Black, the "you're done" shit. I mean, the racist connotations behind that, even if he wasn't intentionally being racist, still racist connotations behind that, and that kind of rhetoric. Some of the shit, the calling AOC a sellout, like, just think that it's counterproductive, to be honest, and that it actually harms the movement, because he ends up, being polarizing and also giving these people an excuse to not support this movement, right? But I think that the people that are making it about Jimmy Dore are focused on the wrong thing right now. I'm sorry, but we had 1 week to get this thing done. Essentially, like 2 weeks since Jimmy Dore. And let's be real, Jimmy Dore came up with the idea. Nobody mentioned it. I hadn't thought of it. Surely he had the initial idea, right? He had the initial idea. Great. All right. After that, like, it's beyond him. Like, everybody I'm sure he's not the only person that had the idea, right? He just happened to be the person with a large enough platform that he could popularize the idea. In fact, I think Jen Perlman separately, earlier than that, had come up with the same exact idea. She's the woman that ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida for Congress, right? She had the same idea before, right? Before Jimmy Dore came up with it, right? So people have had the idea. It's not Jimmy Dore's idea, right? He's not the person that literally just invented the idea. Other people had the idea. Jimmy popularized the idea, right? And I think that Jimmy's strategy didn't go far enough, and I pushed to take it one step further, right? And if you watch the video that I did about the whole Jimmy Dore situation, I continue to voice my support for the movement, said I believe in this movement. I believe that the only disagreement that I have is that we should be fighting for more. We should be demanding even more in this, out of this. And, but, you can disagree with Jimmy. You cannot like Jimmy. I disagree with Jimmy all the time. I do not like, I did a whole ass video before this months ago, where we talked about, I did a video saying, is Jimmy Dore toxic to the left? Honestly, I genuinely think that he might be, and that he might be, might sometimes do more harm than good to the left. But listen, all that being said, we should be able to separate Jimmy Dore out of this, all right? Because again, we have a limited amount of time. We have to choose our battles, right? And even if somebody reprehensible happened to come up with the idea, if it's a good idea, we shouldn't, disregard it because somebody reprehensible happened to be the one that came up with it. That's pathetic. That's weak. That is weak. All right. And so we certainly shouldn't be doing that. Right. And just discounting it because somebody that we don't like happens to be the one that came up with the idea. That's ridiculous in my opinion. Absolutely ridiculous. And we shouldn't even be focusing. We shouldn't be talking about Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore, I tweeted out about this. Jimmy Dore was trending on Twitter yesterday. He was like the #1 thing trending in politics yesterday for a little bit of time, for a little while. Jimmy Dore was the #1 trending topic on Twitter. Not hashtag force the vote, not force a vote for Medicare for all, not, nothing like that. Not Pelosi speakership, nothing like that. Jimmy Dore. So Jimmy Dore, the personality is trending, but the policy issue behind it is not trending. And that's a problem because people are way too hyper focused on, the Jimmy Dore aspect of it and not the underlying policy. Right. So I think that that people should, we need to separate Jimmy Dore out of this and just ignore him for right now, ignore the Jimmy Dore aspect of it and focus on the policy. I intend to talk about the Jimmy Dore aspect of it on January 4th, like the day after this happens. We can all talk about it, right? It's not that far off, right? Like we can all get around to talking about, is that kind of rhetoric helpful? Does it make the left an unwelcoming, uninviting place? Are we pushing people away with that kind of rhetoric? Like we can have all those kind of discussions out, but now is not the time for that. We have a very short window of time, and this is a critical moment. And if we don't seize that moment because we were too busy focusing on Jimmy Dore, then we've failed, right? We failed ourselves if we get distracted by Jimmy Dore. So I've made it a very intentional decision to not talk about the personalities when talking about this issue and just focus on the issue and trying to push the issue forward, right? And we can get around to talking about the rhetoric stuff and all that after this moment passes, but we got to seize the moment when it's here. What if America says, good points to Jesse. I wish we could have calmer arguments, but how can we when reality is so bleak right now? Absolutely. I read this quote often from, it's a Malcolm X quote. Cornel West mentions it in his book, Black Prophetic Fire, and essentially goes something like, Malcolm X would frequently say how, don't expect something cold and detached from somebody whose butt is on the stove, right? And the stove's on. You got to expect that person to holler out, right? And, our butts are on the stove, and so many people's butts are on the stove. People, millions without health care, millions, forced out of their jobs, fired from their jobs. Their butts are on the stove, tens of millions of people, losing their health insurance. Their butts are on the stove. In the middle of a pandemic, hundreds of thousands of people losing members of their family, people dying. their butts are on the stove, right? So you got to expect those people to holler out and maybe the rhetoric won't be the kind. Listen, I mentioned it earlier in the program. Malcolm X on national television, and I played the clip of Cornel West talking about this in the past, but Malcolm X on national television in the midst of the civil rights movement called Martin Luther King a European ass-licking, a European ass-licking Uncle Tom, all right? On national television, Malcolm X called Martin Luther King a European ass-licking Uncle Tom, all right? Martin Luther King did not come out and talk about how, oh, Malcolm X's rhetoric is violent and, you know, and somehow stop, you know, causing him to stop fighting for the principles that he believes in. He didn't fight any less or any weaker, he didn't let it distract him from the things that he believed in. I'm sorry, but you know what? There's going to be some people with some really disrespectful, harsh rhetoric sometimes, and it's shitty. And we should do better than that on the left. And we should build a left that is a welcoming, inviting place where we can have healthy, just basic respect, just basic human decency. Just show one another. Come on. Like, what kind of left are we building if we lose sight of basic human decency, right? Just basic human dignity, basic human decency, right? Like, people don't respond well to being called, bootlicking frauds and sellouts when they aren't bootlicking frauds and sellouts and their intentions are actually pure. It isn't helpful. But why are we focused on that right now? We got to focus on the issue at hand and fight for the things that matter, or else, how are we any better than Jimmy Dore, that we say is like, oh, distracting from the, what matters and that sort of thing. So I agree. Wish we could have common arguments, but don't really expect us to be able to have them when people are suffering, to the level that people are suffering right now. Corey Saylor says, on an unrelated note, Assange's extradition verdict will be delivered on January 4th. Great. Thanks for noting that, Corey. We'll definitely be keeping an eye out on there. Totally support, I do not support any of these actions being taken against Julian Assange. It's it's an attack on freedom of the press, freedom of speech. And, it's only, it only has the support of so many liberals because Assange is tied to WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks hurt Hillary Clinton, and that's pathetic that we can't see that. We are willing to, it's if we're willing to throw away, freedom of the press because the press happens to report something that we don't like, then we don't really care about our civil liberties, at the end of the day. Skeptical says, agreed on building a labor movement first. Thank you, Skeptical. What up? America says, in state and local politics is so important too, not to be forgotten or slept on. Yeah, I agree. But honestly, like I live in Massachusetts. Our electoral politics in this state is gone as well. Like, we can all talk about state politics and stuff, but if you're in certain states, and I'm guessing it's most states, let's be real. I mean, electoral politics, if it's not literally like on the city, community, school district level, I think beyond that level, it all may be too far gone, because here in Massachusetts, we have an 80% Democratic legislature. All right. 80% Democratic legislature. And we couldn't get them to, put a ban on evictions, or to stop rent hikes during during this pandemic. All right. With 80% control over our legislature, Democratic control of the legislature. All the Democrats are just corrupted, and they're all establishment corporate Democrats that are all in control, and it's overwhelming. So, we got a few progressives, but the system is the system, and it's set up, and it's been going along like this for centuries now, and it's really well designed to do exactly as it's doing right now, which is to maintain the suffering of poor and working people. So even sadly, state politics, I think, is while it's important, I don't know that there's much hope in that either. I'm literally currently, in talks and considering potentially running for a state legislature position, potentially running for state representative position here in Massachusetts. And while I still may do that, because I would, I may potentially, I'd like to see, from the inside and be one of the people and show you, firsthand account of a straight up socialist going in there and see what happens from the inside with someone like myself, who is absolutely against this sort of inside politics, BS and that sort of playing nice with the establishment. And I'd like to see if somebody like me even goes in there. But honestly, I mean, like I said, my faith has been shaken by someone like an AOC and others, and even Nina Turner and Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, the squad. Not fighting on an issue like this worries me. So, but I'm somebody, I'm looking at state politics, even for running local, running in state politics. And I'm they'll probably pull up some clips of this if I ever decide to run, and use it against me. But I worry that it may be too far gone as well, because the systems are so thoroughly corrupted and rigged. All right. I'm gonna cut off soon. This stream's going along. I'll just get through all the comments. We don't got that many more comments left, so I'll get through all the comments and then we'll wrap things up. Jesse Hafner says 100% with you on building a labor movement. Every major change came through movements, putting pressure from outside electoral politics. You're completely right. Thank you so much, Jesse. Really appreciate that. Hope you subscribe to the channel. Hope everyone that hasn't, already subscribe to the channel, please do me that favor. Hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, share this video on social media. We got to start, this is the only way we're going to grow this sort of, discussion and build up a proper movement on the left. Of course, we also need financial support desperately here. We're not sustaining right now, and really need to increase our financial support. But I know that people are just hurting right now, so it's very hard. We are in a very particular place where the people that we cater to and fight for are the people that are struggling the most. And so they're just not the kind of people that happen to have the ability to support us. So if you can afford to do so, please beg you to please do so if you can afford it. You can give us a one-time tip on coffee at ko-fi.com/radical democracy, or you can also become, do a recurring payment as low as $1 on coffee. You can also find us on Patreon if you're already on there, patreon.com/radical democracy. Links to both of those are in the description box below. So just open up the description box, click the link, and drop us $1, one single dollar, just to show that you believe in this, in this movement and trying to fight in this way. And I will try to, use the platform as a force for good. I want to build mutual aid networks. I want to build a democratic media, democratic left-wing media. And I need your support, need your help, need your support to do so. So please, if you can afford to do so, please do so, because your backing is crucial. It's vital for somebody like me. And again, I'm unemployed, no income, housing insecure. So, you're also just helping a Black leftist, survive. So if you can afford to do so, please support the show and help me stay afloat. Coffee.com/radical democracy is the best way to do that. Links in the description box below. Okay, back to the comments. Real quick, I just saw Brian Noah says, new subscriber, love your channel. Thank you so much, Brian. Deeply appreciate that, Brian. Deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate that. Thank you so much. I think with that, we are rapidly approaching 1,300 subscribers. I'm going to do a quick check to see if we've hit that 1,300 subscriber mark real quick. Somehow we lost a subscriber. The counts on YouTube are always funky. Somehow it's claiming that I've lost a subscriber. But you know what? When you come out and you speak out against AOC, you lose some people. If you say the least little, if you're critical of AOC, you lose people, sadly. So, I do a video critical of AOC, seemingly supportive of Jimmy Dore in some people's minds. I'm going to lose people, sadly. So please offset them. Share this video out. Tell your friends about it. Tell them to subscribe. offset the haters. Thank you so much, Brian Noah. Really appreciate that. And sometimes YouTube's stats and analytics are just slow catching up. So it's not always in real time. So thank you so much, Brian. Deeply appreciate that. If you can afford to do so, please support the show on coffee.com/radical democracy. We definitely deeply appreciate that. You can support us for as low as $1 a month. If you didn't just hear my whole pitch, links are in the description box below. But thank you so much just for that subscription, just for subscribing. It's so crucial. So deeply appreciate that. Thank you. All right, a few more comments here. Skeptical says, I think any protest that disrupts the status quo creates some leverage. Labor has a lot of potential for sure, but I wouldn't downplay the George Floyd uprising. I don't want to downplay it. I mean, these were the largest, largest civil uprising since the civil rights movement, and I definitely think that there was some value there. I don't see what we gained from it. We didn't fundamentally change anything for the people suffering under that, suffering under the system and suffering at the hands of police brutality. I don't think we've done anything to fundamentally change that. Defunding, police by and large has not happened. A few cities around the country have done little measures here and there, take away a few million, which I think is great and a noble cause, but definitely doesn't go fast enough. I don't want to, downplay them. I mean, these are, signs that I was out there carrying through those protests. Like I was out there and I will, I will, continue to be out there. But I just think that, Joe Biden wasn't receptive to that kind of message. Electoral politics doesn't seem to be receptive to those kind of protests. I think that they just see it as something to co-opt. Honestly, I think that the liberals co-opt those movements, turn it into something, a few hashtags. And I was in there. I was debating, like, somebody was trying to tell me that reverse racism exists. Some so-called leftists on Twitter the other day with like hashtag Black Lives Matter in their bio, and it's like, dude, you're telling me that Black people being skeptical, no pun intended, being skeptical of white folks that have historically harmed them is somehow racist. While claiming that you believe Black Lives Matter, telling that a Black person that I'm being racist for saying that it's not unreasonable for Black people to be concerned and skeptical of white people in this country. Sorry, but. So I just think that those movements, by and large, get co-opted and just don't have enough force behind them because they don't come with, demands attached to them, right? Like ending cash bail, ending qualified immunity, like, we just, and closing all private prisons, like we just, defunding police, we just, they didn't. I do think they moved the needle somewhat on that. I just don't. I don't think that it went far enough, and I don't think. It has the same value as, say, what the yellow vest movements in France do, or the current, the largest strike in world history, and that's going on in India right now. 250 million workers. That's 3/4 of the U.S. population is on strike right now as we speak, and is ready, is set up and ready to strike for the next, 3 or 4 months if they have to. All right, they've got all the rations they need and all the provisions they need, and they have set up camp and they are dug in for the long haul on this, and they refuse to back down. And that's just on the issue of privatizing the farming industry. Really, that's the main issue, privatizing the farming industry. Imagine them trying to denying people healthcare in the middle of a pandemic or something like that. I mean, it would be far more outrage. So I don't want to discount it too much, and I hope I don't discount it too much. I'm not, totally discounting it. I agree with you that it does, any protest disrupting status quo, as Skeptical says there, does create some leverage. So I don't want to totally downplay that. I just think that labor movements have come with a lot more leverage attached because you're hitting the capitalists where it hurts, right? In their pocketbook, in their wallets. That's the only place that money talks. And otherwise they ain't listening, right? Skeptical says, I don't think you were trying to downplay, but just saying. No, good point though. You raise a good point for sure, Skeptical. Skeptical says, since the masses don't follow politics, maybe we should try using street epistemology to figure out what they do care about. Then after we listen to them, we can understand why they're not political. Yeah, absolutely. You know, like we need to do more community outreach and, you know, just, you know, we got to actually get into these communities and talk to these people and listen to them, right? And hear their pain and their struggles and their concerns and then act on that accordingly. And so totally agree. You know, we need more of that. All right, folks, that's all of our comments. I think that's all that we got for now. Shout out to everyone who, you know, hung out with us today, for chatting, for engaging in this discussion. I think it's a really important, valuable discussion that it just has to be had. I'm hurt to see that it looks like we are not going to get a floor vote on Medicare for all. We got 1 day left. Pressure politicians, go out there. If you're near DC, join the fight, join the sit-in DC. Check out the Facebook group, Force the Vote on Facebook. Call your politician if you're in a district with one of these progressive squad members. Call them up, go to their offices, demand change, demand a floor vote on Medicare for all at the very least. We should also, you know, check out David Sirota's article in Jacobin for the other, a fuller, a more complete list of demands that we could be asking for. And yeah, just hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, share this video out. And if you can afford to do so, please support our channel and support the show, support myself. A struggling Black leftist here, unemployed and hurting. Yeah, need all the support that we can get here. Coffee.com/radical democracy, ko-fi.com/radical democracy. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/radical democracy. You can find links to both of those in the description box below, and we deeply appreciate all the support. I'm going to do a quick check on Coffee and oh man, sorry, I'm just doing a quick check to see if we received any new tips or anything on Patreon or Coffee. Nope. So I don't see any. They sometimes take a second to update. So sorry if you did. We will give you a shout out on our next show. So thank you to all of our supporters, all of our Patreon supporters, all of our Coffee supporters, everyone who's ever supported in any way they can, all of our subscribers. Thank you so much for all of your support. Really, really appreciate you. And thanks for joining us tonight. Please share this out. Force the vote, hashtag force the vote, hashtag force the vote, force the vote, force the vote, force the vote. And we need a general strike now. All right, get ready and prepare and just be ready for a general strike, because I think that's the only thing that is going to get us the change that we need. All right. Okay. Thank you so much to everyone. Peace.